we're going to talk about the common sense spiritual path. Common sense spiritual path. And I think that this is really important because here at Unity of Vancouver, we aren't a religion. We don't teach religion. We teach spirituality, common sense spirituality. And you know what that is because it's always in you. You were born with it. You maybe have attended some religious or maybe some anti-religious services or teachings that kind of put inside of you a self-doubt. But it doesn't make any difference. You can restore that wisdom today easily just by learning how to see the difference between beliefs and truths. See, the mental filters of our belief systems distort our view of reality. And so that goes with spirituality and religion. It goes with our idea about who and what God is, who and what Jesus was. Buddha, Lao Tzu, and Rumi, and all of those great teachers. We get sort of brainwashed into thinking a certain way, and those are beliefs, aren't they? They're beliefs, and they're not necessarily true. Do you know that that we are constantly thinking, and that 95% of our thoughts come from our belief system, come from our subconscious mind, from our memories. More than 90% of the time, we cannot see what we don't believe. Did you know that? About 90% of the time, we don't see what we don't believe. Something can be happening, something can be there in front of us, but we can't see it because we don't believe it. I think Wayne Dyer was the first person who said, believing is seeing. Believing is seeing. And non-believing is not seeing. There is a power in this universe that's grace, that's love. And it's not some guy in the sky. I apologize so deeply if I'm going to cut across your belief systems and maybe irritate you a little bit. If that happens, I apologize. But there is no guy in the sky in a robe with his fingers like that. That doesn't exist. The great power of God, the presence of God, the oneness of God, the great creator of the mind is in all things, from the tiniest speck of dust on the farthest planet to the great blue whale, is in each element, as each element. God is the blue whale. God is the speck of dust. God is you. God is each cell in your body. That's the presence of God, the miracle of God, the majesty of God, is that it is everywhere in everything. And if you want to see God, just look out the window or look at your hand. You are being surrounded and filled with miracles every moment of every day. Your heart is beating 20,000 gallons of blood every day. Your DNA, if unraveled, would go to the moon and back a whole bunch of times. You are an amazing miracle because God is in you as you. And when you don't know that, when you see God as some sort of punitive person that will either punish you or reward you, then you get lost. But the first commandment of the 10 that Moses brought down from the mountain, the first commandment is this: I am the Lord your God. You shall not have strange gods before me. I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt not have strange gods before me. Now, did he get that from a guy with a beard and a robe? Or did he get it from a burning bush? Where did he get that message? He got it from just as Jesus went for 30 days into the desert, 40 days into the desert, and meditated and prayed. All of these great masters got that by becoming finally one with God. Finally, they saw it. They understood that they were one. Didn't Jesus say over and over again, I am the Father are one? And didn't he say to you that the kingdom of heaven is within you? The kingdom of God is within you? So your brain, that's how we operate. We operate with our physical brain. And it's good that we've got it. That brain is a magnificent tool. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I could talk for an hour about the miracles and the majesty of your brain. But your brain, with its 1 billion neurons and trillion connections to other neurons, has a memory storage of around 1 million gigabytes. 1 million gigabytes. Here's what that means in real life. If you were to convert those gigabytes into a digital recording and play those memories on your TV set, you'd have to watch 24 hours a day for 300 years to watch your memory. 24 hours a day for 300 years. That's how vast your memory is. And your memory is your belief system. What happened to you, the experiences that happened to you as you went through life, they caused you to believe in a certain way. Well, what I'm talking about today is common sense spirituality, which is beyond our beliefs. See, you believe a certain way and I believe a certain way, and the truth of it is we don't believe in the same way because you're a unique individual. You're an aspect of God. You're a facet on the crystal that will shine a certain light that's different than mine. And we're not going to see the same way. But if we have spiritual clarity, if we have common sense spirituality, then we can see how each other see, and we can become one with each other. What is spiritual clarity? It's very, very different than mental clarity. Common sense spirituality is natural knowing. Natural knowing, being one with what is, with truth, with God. Natural knowing and understanding are different, vastly different. Understanding is based on opinions, isn't it? Opinions and calculations. And you arrive then at an understanding. Now I understand how this works. I see all the pieces fitting together, so now I understand how this works. But natural knowing is just you become the receptacle for God's wisdom, for the great wisdom of the universe, and that channels into you, and you just know, and you don't know how you know. And a lot of times that's called psychics, isn't it? Well, the U.S. military used psychics, used these people who could naturally know. And they didn't want to call it psychics, so they called it non-invasive electroencephalography. Non-invasive electroencephalography. You know, I had to work to be able to pronounce that. They had a lady named Rosemary Smith who was a young airman. And they knew that somewhere in Africa, a Russian plane had crashed. Somewhere in Africa, they didn't know where. Now, Africa's a pretty big place, right? It's a continent. It's pretty big. They knew that somewhere in Africa, this plane had crashed. And it had secrets on it that they wanted. So the U.S. intelligence wanted to get those secrets. So they asked Rosemary Smith if she could maybe find that for them. And so she went into a trance. And after a while, she came out and she gave them the latitude and the longitude of where that plane would be. And they sent their satellites over that and focused on that point, and there was the plane. That's natural knowing. You do that all the time. You always think that you have to figure things out, but most of the time you don't figure things out. Most of the time you just know. And you need to be able to trust that. And we get that trust from opening ourselves, from opening our heart wisdom rather than just our brain wisdom, our heart wisdom. You know, our heart has 40,000 neurons of its own, and it sends more messages up to the brain than the brain sends to the heart. The heart is an amazing place for natural knowing. And we expand that, and we become more centered in that through meditation, through contemplation, and through prayer. through positive prayer. Prayer to the universal mind. Common sense spirituality, natural knowing, is allowing yourself to be one with truth, but instead of being one with our stories. See, here's what happens. We have an experience. And that's a personal experience. Every experience you have is a personal experience. I don't care if there's 1,000 people around you. Your experience of it is your personal experience. So you have a personal experience. And that personal experience tells you what reality is. Now, it probably isn't right, but it tells you what reality is. But you see that experience through your individual belief system, your filters. That belief system, built by all of the previous experiences you had, now puts it together and says, this is what this is. And so this experience happens. It has to fit into that matrix of other experiences in your subconscious mind. In order for that to happen, it's not going to push the other experiences away. It's going to change itself so that it fits. So that new experience. Now, when it fits into your belief system, it isn't the same thing that actually happened. It's been manufactured into a different way. It's been manipulated. It's been distorted so that it'll fit with what you already believe. And then if somebody asks you about your experience, then you tell them, well, that wasn't their experience. I don't know if you grew up in a house with siblings, but if you did, you can ask them, do you remember when dad did this or that, or mom did this and that? And I promise you, none of them will remember it the same way, because their belief systems were different than yours. So that experience had to go in and get sorted out in a different way. So your memories, your belief systems are not really accurate. They're accurate for you, and they're good. And I'm not saying they're bad, they're good. Nothing wrong with them. It's just that truth is one thing and belief is another thing. And they're not the same thing. And when you're and those belief systems and those experiences become your story. So you tell your story. You tell your story to yourself and to other people over and over and over again. This is who I am. This is who I feel like I am. This is what I've experienced. This is how I show up in the world. This is me. No, it's not. No, it's not. You are a river. You're moving, you're flowing. You're changing all the time. You're moving and changing all the time. And when you're in your stories, you're just not your essence. You're not your essential self. You're not living in grace and peace. But when you're in essence, peace and turmoil, and when you're in essence and you're in peace amid turmoil, the turmoil doesn't touch you because it's not you. It's just part of the story. Your mental clarity comes from studying and calculating and thinking. Out of that subconscious mind, you think 70,000 thoughts a day. 70,000 thoughts a day. That's your brain mind. 70,000 thoughts a day based on what? Based on your belief systems. And you know what? 95% of the thoughts you have today are the same thoughts you had yesterday and the same thoughts you'll have tomorrow. So where's the growth? Where's the gain? We gain spiritual clarity by letting go of our beliefs and by letting go of the stories that define us, that tell us who we are, and to see ourselves instead as the essence of consciousness that connects us to the divine. So we need to stop thinking the way we did yesterday and look for deeper dimensions, deeper truths, and deeper meanings for everything. Only then can this spirit tide come washing in and show you what makes you essentially you. There's a river flowing through here. And this river is a mighty river. It's the presence of Holy Spirit. It's the presence of the creative mind. It's a wide river. And we're in a deep valley in that river. As that river flows through, we're in this deep valley. And I can tell you that the river is wide. and the valley is deep. The river is wide and the valley is low. I call to my God. My God is all things, in all places, at all time. My friend, you have a choice, and I have a choice. We are eternal. To begin with, we've got to have that clear between us. You were never born and you will never die. You are forever. You are a spiritual being, temporarily inhabiting this physical body, giving this physical body everything it needs to stay alive by your spiritual presence, the presence of God. And all that you pray for is yours, because there's nothing that is not. But you have to let go of the beliefs about God and the beliefs about religion and the beliefs about your being born and you're dying. And you have to open your mind. I'm not saying take my beliefs. Please believe, I'm not saying take my beliefs. I'm just saying open your heart and your mind and let reality as it really is come into, as common sense. And then you have natural knowing. The military, I was talking earlier about how they found a plane in the jungle. They asked a man, they wanted to know what the Russians were developing, and they knew they were developing something. So they asked a man to go into his trance and try to find out what that is. And he found a big building. And he told him that he could smell chemicals and gasoline and other things. And he wandered around in his mind. And then he said, there's a long form in there. It's a long torpedo-like form in there. And it's got fins like a shark. Later, they found out that that was a Typhoon-class submarine, first in the world. And the Soviets named it the Akula, which is Russian for shark. There's nothing you can't know. There's nothing you do not know. Spiritual clarity, the being we call God, exists in everything, as I said, from the tiniest speck of dust on the farthest planet to the entire planet of Earth. Each is God, and the consciousness is there. I was interviewing a guy who was a psychic, and I was interviewing him for something else. And my brother, and it was late in the afternoon, I was in San Diego, and my brother and I were going to go fishing. So he was going to bring his boat out. He lived in the outside of San Diego. He was going to bring his boat out, and he was going to bring his big old sloppy-eared dog named Gus along, and we were going to go out fishing. And I looked at the clock, and it was starting to get late. And I thought, I'm not going to get through this interview in time. So I started to call, and the guy across the desk from me looked at me, and he said, that's your brother, isn't it? And I said, what? It's your brother you're thinking about. I said, yes. Said his name starts with a B. He didn't get the name, but my brother's name is Bill. And he said, is that his dog? That's his dog, isn't it? His name's Gus. He didn't know me. He didn't know my brother. He's no different than you are. He just didn't live inside of his belief system. He was able to set those aside and become spiritual in a common sense way. Not to try to learn, but to try to open and be, not to try to understand, but to try to know. This is a wonderful, wonderful path. The path of spirituality, of common sense spirituality. It's one that you will be every day surprised by what you find out about yourself and about this wonderful world we live in. Now, in a little while, we're going to have some questions and answers. So if you'll write down your questions on the chat, then in a little while we'll have questions and answers, and maybe I'll get a chance to answer your question.
We will start our Q&A. Now, our first question, Bob, comes from Linda Purcell, who says, how can we shape our stories to align better with truth?
Shirley?
Bob, you're muted.
Okay, I'm back now. Thanks. Shirley, would you mind reading the question again?
Yes. How can we shape our stories to align better with truth?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. That's really a great question. Because we're always going to have stories, aren't we? Because that's who we are. We're communicators. We're dramatists. We're definitely going to have stories. The story that comes to me should be a story that comes to me through awareness. In other words, here, let me sort of sort this out. The reason I'm sort of stammering around here is because when we talk about this level of abstraction, spiritual abstraction, it's hard to put it into words. You can put it in music, you can put it in a painting or a sculpture, and even in dance, but it's a little difficult to put into words. There's no language that completely captures this. But let me do my best. To begin with, we have to know, and once again, we're not a religion, we're a spiritual community. And I hope that this doesn't injure somebody's religious beliefs, but we have to know who and what God really is, the creative mind. And when we know what the creative mind is, and we know that every single thing in nature, every element is the fullness of God. You know, in holography, we know that every part of a whole contains the whole. And every part of this entire existence, in all the multiverses, in all dimensions, each part, each element contains the whole of the mind, of the creative spirit, of love, of power, of healing, of God. And when we practice that, when we know that, then we transform. We stop being the story of something that happened to us and become the story of probability and the story of possibility. We become the story of reality. So we talk about the miracles of our lives. We talk about the joy of our lives. We talk about what's happening as we grow in wisdom and joy. And that becomes our story. But we can't do that until we start becoming who we really are. And becoming who we really are means, see, this is the confusing part again, is to see ourselves as one with God. What does it mean to be one with God? It means that God's not up here and I'm down here. It means I'm one with God. Jesus said, I'm one with the Father. To become one with God. When we become one with God, we stop fretting and worrying and we stop getting into tension and distress, and we become peaceful and filled with love and generosity and guidance that comes from all of the world around us. We keep learning lessons every day from trees, from the wind, from people, from children, from laughter, from music. We keep gathering, and we keep growing in wisdom and joy, and that becomes our story. But otherwise, what we do is we live in that memory. We live in that memory. And that becomes who we think we are. We've got to break that habit. I hope that helps, Linda. Thank you very much.
And our next question is from Sean. How to relay this message to the non-willing to believe? Therein lies the challenge.
Therein, Sean, you're right. Therein lies the challenge. I mean, it's kind of rude, but you could say to somebody who's working out in that other, you see people like Jesus and Buddha and even Gandhi and Mandela, all those people who were in the light, all of them, Lao Tzu, all of them, Krishna, all of them. And their lives were filled with joy and love and peace and healing and miracles. And so you can say to these people that don't want to go here, they say, well, I don't believe that, I believe this. And you say, well, how's that working out for you? How's it working out for you? Like, does that expand you? Does that bring more joy? Do you feel a closer oneness with God? Do you feel more spiritually awakened and alive? Do you feel like you have freedom? Like you are loved, you are blessed, you are safe, you are free. Do you feel that? Loved, blessed, safe, and free? If not, then how's that working out for you? Because where I am is I'm in a river of grace. And I know God. I know God. And that river of grace is filled with the love, the expression of God. And I'm going on eternally, for eternity. And there, in my world, there is no heaven and hell. There's just is. And heaven is love, and hell is hatred. Heaven is faith, and hell is despair. But people have to make their choice. And I think that, like we say in AA, I think sometimes people have to hit bottom. I know I did. I had to hit bottom before I found out the truth. Thanks, Sean.
And our next question is from Lazalina Rubio, says, I don't understand. If we are not our stories, then how do we get to know who we really are?
Well, Rosalina, if you're eternal, and I know you are never born, you will never die. You've been here forever, and forever throws away the aspect of time. So if I say you were here forever, that doesn't mean you were here 300 trillion years ago. There are no years in forever. There's only now. And you are now, and you are here forever. And so before you came and got this body and had these experiences, who were you? Who were you then? People who have children, when they're raising their children, they see that they're all different. They all came out of the same womb from the same sperm, but they're all different. How come they're different? And some of them have different ideas about reality. And parents sometimes get blown away because kids say things and parents go, how did you know that? Because they've been around forever. Who were you before you came into your body? Your job here, your purpose here, is to spiritually grow in wisdom and joy, to purposely grow in wisdom and joy. And when you say, this is my story, then remember that 95% of the thoughts you had yesterday are the same thoughts you have today and the same thoughts you'll have tomorrow. Then where's the growth? Where's the wisdom? You're having 70,000 thoughts a day, and almost all of them are the same thoughts you had yesterday. So where's the growth? So if you let go of who you think you are, let go of it. Quit trying to validate it. Let go of it. Be willing to just be new. Say, I'm being born again today. I don't believe anything. I don't want to believe anything. I'm just going to learn as I watch. Then what happens is a new you begins to awaken, the spiritual you. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. And now our next question is from Randy. How can we best distinguish between intuition and ego, which often likes to masquerade as intuition?
Oh, that's a great question. That's a really great question. When we're reacting from ego, we're always reacting from fear. That's one of the ways you know. Ego is always, always, always fear-based. When I'm operating from intuition, here's what happens, incidentally, is that you're being told by people like me that you should trust your intuition. And so you do, you trust your intuition. And then it turns out to be a big mistake, and it's a big mess. and you say, I trusted my intuition. I thought this was the thing, and it didn't turn out right. And so you stop trusting your intuition. But being able to use your intuition takes practice. It doesn't just happen. It takes practice, because you have to practice not thinking through this thing, not overthinking this thing. You have to know it. So somebody comes to you and they want to be hired, or you're going to a place maybe to be hired, and you're being interviewed, and you're in a business place, or you're meeting somebody for the first time, and this person could become a really good friend, or you're meeting somebody who's going to marry into the family, and you have certain feelings about that. You have certain feelings about that person. You have certain feelings about this job, or about the person interviewing you, or about the person you're interviewing. You have certain feelings about that, and you ask yourself, is this intuition, or is this ego? Is it fear-based, or is it love-based? If it's fear-based, it's probably ego. If it's love-based, then that means that your heart is opening and you're looking at all aspects of this. And then if the message that comes back to you says, this probably isn't for you, then you know that that was the intuition. I hope that helps. Thank you.
And we have an interesting question here from Jim Vollett. My understanding is the US military gave up their psychic program because it was not sufficiently dependent. How can we know what is belief and truth then?
Jim, that's really, really a wonderful question. Thank you. I think the US did give up its psychic program. And I think that there's a couple of reasons. One, getting funding for that is a little bit difficult, because it's like airy-fairy to a lot of people who are doing the funding. That's one part. The other part is this: you can't militarize spirituality. You can't militarize God. I keep using the word river, and I do that because rivers are changing. Every nanosecond, the river changes. It's different. It's folding and weaving and becoming, always different, constantly. If you take your cup and go down to the river and scoop up a cup, do you have the river in your cup? No, you just have some water. So the river is not the water. And when you look at the river, it's not the water. It's the becoming. It's the energy. It's the flow. It's the becoming of things. It's the becoming of a reality. It's not the water. And so what the military has to do in order to be military is they have to be able to coordinate things and organize things and put things in places and know where they are and know how long will it take us to get 25 bombers to this place, and how long will it take us to get, and how does that all work, and get that psychic in here because I've got something that I need done. Doesn't work that way. Doesn't work that way. Natural knowing and psychic ability has to be free. Has to be free. Have to be loved, blessed, safe, and free. And then your natural knowing can flow. And incidentally, there are psychics, but you're a psychic, Jim. You are a psychic. You have psychic powers. And you know that on some level, you know that because you've used them before. You've seen things before. You've known things before. You've known when you thought about somebody you hadn't thought about for a long time, and then the phone rang and that was them. You know how that works. But you can't put it in a box with square corners. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, Reverend Bob. That brings our time and all the questions to a close. So it worked perfectly, as it always does.